Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Dave, and as usual, I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchist Ted.
Don't allow those D&D YouTube videos to be dispelled from your YouTube feed. Hit that subscribe button.
And you can summon Nerdarchy videos to your feed like magic by attuning to that notification bell.
Today we're talking about old spells in Dungeons & Dragons. We're going to revisit some of our past glory days of D&D. But before we do, if you enjoy the content we put out, and you want to help out the channel, and you don't want to do Patreon or anything like that, we now sell products. We have Nerdarchy the store. There's a bunch of stuff over there, but fresh on the digital shelves is the Nerdarchy out-of-the-box encounters pre-order for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. It is an amazing 55 encounters that are ready to go, drop right in your game. Use them when you don't have anything else to throw out there. There's a link in the description. Go check it out.
All right, so we're looking at Knell. And, honestly, we were thinking about this, for the last couple of weeks. And it was kind of amusing that as we decide to do this, there winds up being the Unearthed Arcana, where one of the class abilities is called Knell. So it's kind of humorous from that angle. But I've got my 3.5 player's handbook here, and I'm gonna turn to page 217 and look at the spell Knell. It is necromancy. It was on the death and evil list as cleric and death. Verbal somatic casting time was 1 action. The range was touch. The target was a living creature. Duration was instantaneous, 10 minutes per hit die. With saving throw was will, which now is wisdom. Spell resistance was yes. You draw forth the ebbing life force of a creature and use it to fuel your own power. Upon casting this spell, you touch a living creature that has -1 or fewer hit points. If the subject fails its saving throw, it dies, and you gain 1d8 temporary hit points, a +2 bonus to strength. Additionally, your effective caster level goes up by +1, improving spell effects depending upon caster level. The increases effective caster level does not grant you access to more spells. The effect lasts for 10 minutes per hit die of the subject.
All right, so it was just a brutal spell, and it's so brutal because, one, it just snuffed out the life of another creature. Like, they've gone down, they're dying, but they're not dead. And you're like, I can use a snack right now. And your life force looks so very tasty. Zoinks! And if they fail that saving throw, you get buffed. I mean, you're getting temporary hit points, your spell casting power increases, and your physical vitality and strength actually increase. It was just a kind of sick spell. Now, I've heard chatter on the internet that it was basically a DM spell. And as a DM, I must say I have used that spell. Listen, if you have a big evil bad guy and they are just so vile and evil, what could be more evil than them just siphoning off the power of different creatures on the battlefield, whether it's their allies that have gone down, whether it's a peasant that they snap their neck in front of you, or one of the players to so you let them know, man, prison rules, D&D, we ain't messing around.
It is brutal. It is, highly effective. I don't know whether this, completely fits within, the spectrum of 5th edition, but, we're going to explore that concept and see, all right, if we were to create that spell now, what would it look like? I've already read what exactly it does. There's already things like, dominate and disintegrate that, you can steal choice or literally just kill them outright if you do enough damage. So there isn't really a whole lot to say, that somebody might not take this action. If somebody gets downed, I could walk over to them with a sword and deliver a strike that can give them 2 failed death saves. So why not magic that can end that? You get a saving throw, so why not?
Well, what I'm hearing, what you're saying is not beyond the scope of the game as it currently exists.
Correct.
Is it a good thing to do? I don't know. Is it really any different than coup de grace on someone that's already down? Players generally don't do that. Sometimes evil big bads will, and yes, it does have the connotations of it. It's kind of not nice. This is one of the darker aspects of necromancy when you break down what you're actually doing. You're devouring their life force to improve yourself. But I think 5e has some mechanics in it that would make using the spell easier. I would replace the casting time probably with a reaction. If a creature goes to 0 hit points within range, you can use your reaction to cast the spell and gain those benefits. Now there's some different things. Increasing your caster level doesn't really mean anything in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. But what we could do is we could replace that with, for a certain duration, the next spell that you cast, you can cast it as one spell slot higher. So it won't affect everything you do, but it would affect some things you do.
You could totally, even if you're not a sorcerer, what it could do, even if you're not a sorcerer, what if it empowered your spells? That could be a way that you gain access to class abilities you don't technically have. I think that could be something that would be pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's a way to do it. I don't know if I would like to do that way just because it steps on the sorcerer's toes. I do like the idea of, and also it would like lend itself to multi-classing too. The idea that you just like, the next spell you cast is just upcast by one. The hardest thing is I think is going to be the strength, because giving bonuses like that isn't something that really happens in 5e.
So what if we replace that with, advantages on any, ability checks or attack rolls that involve strength are made with advantage?
Yeah, strength-based rolls you could get advantage on. Getting advantage on attack rolls is really strong. It's a 2nd level spell. So you might just give advantage on strength-based checks. Not quite as good. But we can also look at other spells to model as well. If we look at enlarge, you do an extra d4 when you're enlarged. Your weapon doesn't technically go up in the die or in the basically the size. So you might do something like that.
And then, the other thing to look at is, the temporary hit points. Would we want to say that, you get temporary hit points, or would you say that you'd want to heal a certain amount? Because temporary hit points in 3rd edition, they just stacked on top of each other. So it wasn't, a big thing. But here, temporary hit points in 5th edition, it's contained by the source. Whatever your biggest source is, usually is the one that you get.
Yeah, we've seen temporary hit points work a couple different ways in 5e. They seem to be changing them a little bit, where before it was like wherever you get the biggest source, that's the one you use. We've seen some language lately where it's, if you already have temporary hit points, you can't benefit from said thing. Well, I like temporary hit points better because it is a limiting factor. It means if you're going to keep doing this over and over again, you could benefit from it, but you might not necessarily benefit from it. Some of the things like using advantage on strength checks instead of a static bonus means you're not going to keep gaining a benefit from casting it over and over again. So it means you won't use it quite as often during combat. Now, the other benefits, temporary hit points and maybe upcast, those are some things that could keep getting used over and over again with a little bit of space, because if you get hit and take damage, those temporary hit points go away. If you cast something and you've upcast it, then you could then, cast again and get that benefit. So there would be uses for it throughout a combat, but you probably wouldn't want to do it every round.
Granted. Now, originally it had a will save, which, converts to wisdom now. Do you think that wisdom would make sense, or do you think this would be more of like a hardy condition and, it should be a constitution save by the victim?
I think because you're talking about your life force, it's wisdom. It's your will to live and your will to not, have your life force sucked out of your body. I don't know if like how physical you are is going to really affect that. Like a really frail high priest of a particular deity, physically wouldn't be able to resist that, but mentally, through force of will and their piety, they might be able to.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, originally, we were looking at this as a second level spell, in third edition, and we have, there are a few random, not random, but there are a few rare spells that have changed levels throughout the editions. Would you think this should still stay as a second level spell, given the things that we're talking about?
So you would be able to do this, by third level as a cleric. So the question is, you have to look at, well, what are some other things you can do as a cleric? Well, one of the things you could do is cast aid and give 5 or increase the maximum hit HP of 3 different creatures by 5, which that's way better than temporary hit points because you can keep refilling those for 8 hours and it doesn't require concentration. This would be a concentration spell.
I don't know. I think stealing the life force. Initially it lasted 10 minutes. I would give it a minute, but with no concentration. It's vile. It's evil. I think that a lot of the benefits aren't going to stack with multiple castings. So like you could stack this with a couple of things that might make it a little bit more brutal, but not a lot. I would vote no, no concentration on
Yeah, see, I'm probably leaning on the concentration based on other spells in the game. But that's something that could definitely be play tested. Also, we could even go a different, even a different route where it's actually like a quick hit and it only lasts a round. So
it.
until the end of your next turn. So you're going to want to get in there and use whatever benefits you've got. And then that would also speak to, well, you're probably going to want to use this over and over again. Almost becomes addictive to your cleric, sucking off the life force of other creatures. And also, this is a spell I would consider maybe even extending to the warlock.
Yes, I would make this a warlock and evil cleric for certain. But
And then the question is, what about upcasting? Is this a spell we could convert into an upcast spell? Previously, the only thing that was really affected by your level was the duration. Or no, not even the duration. That was by hit dice, right?
right, it was the original hit dice of the
Yeah.
creature. Now, if we're looking at advantage on strength checks, that's not going to scale. If we're looking at temporary hit points, like die 8, per level of the spell slot that you used above third or above second, that could be a lot. But if it's only going to be, you know, it would be whether you're looking at a round or a minute, would be your spectrum. Those are things that are gonna, really make the decision of how much you really want to, go ahead and do that. So,
Well, there's other areas to think about too, right? Like the upcast, that could be increased. The number of temporary hit points you said can be increased as well. But not every single spell is a 1-for-1, right? It could
true.
be tiered, right? It could be, it could be a second level spell slot to cast the spell, but then it might go to 5th and then 7th and 9th, or it might only be like, 5th and above, 7th above, or it can even break down different than that. If you look at the different ones, then you need to decide, you know, is an upcast of +2, +3, is that super uber insane, to do based off of, your casting is, because technically you're kind of in some ways you're almost getting the spell slots back.
True.
And also getting an extra 1 to 2 more die 8s of temporary hit points. That's another thing. But again, like the more of those temporary hit points you have, the less useful they're going to be if you cast it subsequent rounds into combat.
That is very true. So based off of that, I don't. While I have definitely cast spells using those, tiered scaling, looking at it from, with this, it's a second level spell. So maybe every 2, so 4, 6, 8, level spell slots is where you would get an additional +1 casting and additional D8, hit points. So really you'd be maxing out at 4 die 8 temporary hit points and 4 spells that get an extra bump.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I wasn't thinking of 4 spells to get a bump. I was thinking of 1 spell gets a bump.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it just gets way more powerful.
Well, then, yeah, I like that even better. As a every other. So like, all right, the next spell you would cast is 4 levels higher. If you were to use an 8th level spell slot, that's really almost a throwaway of like, all right, well, I'm not really caring about this spell slot. I really just want to kill you and look really awesome. So yeah, that would be my vote. Every other.
And let's face it, generally increasing a spell by 4 levels isn't as good as casting a spell from that spell level anyway.
Mhm.
Thematically, it's kind of cool because it's like a freebie,
Right.
but it's still not going to be quite as strong as actually casting. Say you cast a 1st level spell and now it's a 5th level spell. You know, it's magic missile at a 5th level spell slot is not as cool as Steel Wind Strike. Sorry.
and we've seen that exact comparison. You've used a 9th level magic missile or an 8th level magic missile in my game, and it's like, all right, well, that did that did a little bit of damage.
That did
But
40 points of damage. That was kind of anticlimactic.
so like it's definitely one of those things of like, okay, well, I know there's definitely spells out there that have a much greater impact. So, but there's no resisting magic missile unless you pop out that shield. So, all right. So, what this really wraps up to into a spell. So we have a 2nd level spell. Clearly, it's necromancy. Uh, it's a reaction to cast when a creature drops to 0 within 5 feet. They make a wisdom saving throw, and if they fail, they die. They are dead. Their life force has been ripped out of their body and stolen into you. You gain advantage on strength saving throws, a die 8 temporary hit points, and the next spell that you cast is treated as if you cast 1 spell slot higher. When you cast this spell using a spell slot 2 levels above, i.e., 4, 6, 8, for each of those 2 levels, the next spell you cast goes up by an additional level, and you gain an additional die 8 temporary. Is that what we're looking at?
That's what we're looking at. I would say you gain advantage, like you said, strength saving throws as well as ability checks as well, which makes it fun and thematic. And then the classes that are going to get this, obviously it's going to be the cleric that's going to get it. Maybe even the grave domain. You could put it on their list. But that being said, generally spell lists always usually come from the player's handbook. So maybe not so much, but I could definitely see giving it to the warlock as well.
I completely agree. I think there's a lot of fun things here. I think this is going to be out there. I guess the question, for those out there watching, what do you guys think? Is this a spell that you would use in your game? And if you like videos with the darker aspects of D&D, then you might want to check out Dark Heroes and Anti-Hero. Do they belong in D&D?
You know what? Over on Patreon, we create products every month for 5e for players and GMs alike.
But that's not all. We do weekly live chats with our patrons. The patrons automatically get entered into our monthly giveaway and more.
So until next time, stay
Stay
nerdy.
nerdy.